أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. قال الله تعالى في شان حبيبي إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد صلاة تنجينا بها من جميع الأهوال والآفات وتقضي لنا بها جميع الحاجات وتطهرنا بها من جميع السيئات وترفعنا بها عندك أعلى الدرجات وتبلغنا بها أقصى الغايات من جميع الخيرات في الحياة وبعد الممات إنك على كل شيء قدير. صلاة وسلاما عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. Today is the 2nd of Rabiul Awwal. This of course is the blessed month in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent His beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam to us, which is very unusual, or rather is unique, because people give many things but no one gives their beloved, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent His beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam to us. We will kind of talk more about the Mawlid of Rasulullah in the next few Fridays. The 28th of the last month, which is Safar, which would have been Monday, was the day of the martyrdom of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And so there are certain aspects of him specifically that I want to cover, and then connect that to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know, and we've talked about this before, when he was martyred, this was about the 6th time that he had been given poison, and the other previous times he survived, which also is a testament to his strength. We know when Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh, when he was attacked, the sword that he was attacked with was infused with poison. There were others there who got cut by that sword and died immediately. Ali it cracked his skull, and he was attacked on the 19th and didn't pass until the 21st of Ramadan. So Imam Hassan alayhi salam, again, this was the 6th time when he was poisoned, and this time, he was coughing up congealed clots of blood and flesh. That's how strong the poison that they gave him. For those that have been listening in on the Sunday classes, we've been talking about Ahlul Bayt, about the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and as we keep reminding everybody, Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, the son of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when he was in Damascus and entered the masjid, and he gives a khutbah after basically removing the imam from his position. And part of the khutbah, he says that we, the household of Rasulullah have been given 6 characteristics. Ilm, which is knowledge, and they're not limited to a particular knowledge. They are given knowledge, period. These are people that when you ask them anything, they didn't have to say, I don't know. And it didn't matter what you asked them. The second characteristic that he mentions, which we're going to cover today, inshallah, is Hilm. And even though it sounds similar to Ilm, it's a very different word. So Hilm is what is translated in English as forbearance. And we'll come back to this point. The third thing that he mentions is generosity. And then he says eloquence, when they speak, just the way they're able to use the language. And not just a language, but the languages. Courage. These are people who did not fear anyone other than their Lord. Whether they were in battle or in front of a king or dealing with anybody. And then love in the hearts of the believers for them. So this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instilled in the hearts of the believers, is that they automatically love them. So if someone does not love them, then you have to understand that they're not in that list of believers. So he mentions these 6 characteristics, but if you look at these characteristics, they are given to the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam because they have attained it through him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We look at the knowledge of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam encompassing everything. We look at his hilm, and this is the point that I want to come back to, but then his generosity, his eloquence, and no one was more generous than him. You asked for a drop and he'd give you an ocean. No one was more eloquent than him. No one was more courageous than him. And this is, unanimous amongst the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They said, we never saw anyone more courageous than him. And no one was ever more loved than him, and will ever be more loved than him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To the extent that even the enemies honored and respected him. Hilm, again translated as forbearance. This is one of those characteristics that Imam Hassan al-Islam portrayed in a very unique fashion. Hilm means that someone is being oppressed. So to have hilm, you have to have oppression first. The person who's going to demonstrate hilm is the one who's being oppressed. And yet, as he's being oppressed, he overlooks everything. The oppression does not change him, nor does he have any animosity against the one who is oppressing him. So sabr is part of hilm. People try to interchange the words, but these are two different words. So patience is part of hilm. Hilm encompasses a lot of other aspects. Not only patience, but also involves forgiveness and overlooking things. So when we look at the life of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, it is his right to be the Khalifa. Yet he gives up that right for the betterment of the Ummah, so that not a drop of blood of the believers will be spilt. And in so giving up that right, he gives up the rule of a third of the known world at the time. He walks away from all of this. But he also does all of this knowing what is coming for him. Because when he comes back to Medina Munawwara, all of the conditions that were laid out, or rather most of the conditions that were laid out, were at some point violated. He himself and his family are put through a lot of difficulty. And still, he shows this patience, he shows this character that no one can deny. No change in his character. So, a lot of people, they're very easygoing when times are good, and then when times get bad, they're grumpy old men. When someone's healthy, really good. And then when health starts to fail, then everything becomes a complaint. When people are good to them, they're really good with the people. But then when someone is bad with them, then you don't find anybody worse than them. This is the opposite of Hilm. Again, Hilm is being oppressed, but not changing the character. The character always stays upright and good. And even to the extent of overlooking those that are oppressing the person. Which is interesting because, when Imam Hassan al-Islam, when he is martyred, he requests to be buried next to his grandfather, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he also tells his brother, Imam Hussein al-Islam, that, to ask the wife of Rasulullah some permission to be buried there, and he says she will give it. But Marwan, who was the governor of Medina at that time, he says he will not allow this, and if there is a commotion, then bury me in Baqi. Before that, when Imam Hussein al-Islam himself comes and asks his brother, he says, who did this to you? He says, what will you do if I tell you? He says, I will kill them. He says, let it go. I will not tell you. So as they're trying to bury him next to Rasulullah, Marwan and his men create a commotion to the extent that arrows are even shot. So Imam Hussein al-Islam takes his brother to Jannatul Baqi and buries him there beside their mother, Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha. And as they're burying him, Marwan, who was the one who had abused him his whole life, this is a man who couldn't open his mouth without cursing Ali, the father of Imam Hassan and Hussein alayhi salam. He is crying, and not just tears, but crying out loud. And when the people ask him, he said, what are you doing? You opposed him your whole life. He says, I never saw anyone with more hilm than him, with more forbearance than him. Everything I did. The reality of why he was crying was he couldn't break him. He says, everything I did, he never changed. He never responded in a manner that was unbecoming of him. But again, these are the true heirs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when we look at the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we all talk about Taif. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the people of Mecca, after the 3 years boycott, and after the passing of his two greatest supporters, his wife Bibi Khadija radiallahu anha and his uncle Hazrat Abu Talib radiallahu anhu, after their passing, so he goes to Taif. And what do the people of Taif do? The three major leaders of Taif refused to even talk to him. And then as he's leaving, it's now, okay, fine, they didn't talk to him, but then as he's leaving, what do? They release the dogs and the children and everybody throwing stones at him and jeering and spitting and everything else. To the extent that the blood, is flowing. And finally, when they get to a point where they can stop, the blood, the shoes won't come off normally because the blood is congealed inside of the shoes. And this is when, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends Jibreel alayhi salam with the angel of mountains, and they come and he says to him, he says, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you want, we will destroy them. Taif is like Makkah. These are two twin cities. Makkah used to be surrounded by mountains. Now, of course, they got all the skyscrapers. Taif also surrounded by mountains. So he says, if you want the angel of mountains will cause the mountains to crush them, fall upon them. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, is this the command of Allah? Or is Allah asking me? And Jibreel alayhi salam says, no, this is not the command of Allah. And if you read the dua that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam makes before Jibreel comes, he says, oh Allah, I complain to you about my weakness. That the people, that I'm seeing low in the sight of the people. He doesn't complain to Allah about Allah, nor does he complain to Allah about the people that did all of this. And so when Jibreel alayhi salam comes and he asks, and then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that if Allah is asking me, then all I say is, Rabbi yahdi qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. That these are my people, but they do not know me. And he says, I have hope that perhaps one day their children will accept this. The interesting thing is that the people of Taif technically were not the people of Rasulullah. Because if you look, the people of Rasulullah were Quraysh. The people of Taif are Banu Thaqif. But he is Rahmatul lil Alameen. He is mercy to all of creation. And so he looks upon all of Allah's creation as his own. This is why he says that these are my, oh Allah, Rabbi ihdi qawmi, oh my Lord, these are my people, but they don't know me. This is Hilm. When Fatah Makkah takes place, all of those people who had abused him and done all of these things to him, what does he say when he's entering the city? He says, whoever seeks refuge in the house of Abu Jahl is safe. Whoever seeks refuge in the house of Abu Sufyan is safe. These are the same people who ran him out of the city. Who always were trying to kill him. Who abused him and abused those who would follow him. And also now when they accept Islam, again, as if nothing happened. And even those who he knows are hypocrites, who he knows are going or oppose him, he even overlooks them for the betterment of the people. This is why when Abu Umar asked to take Zul Khawaisra's head off, when various companions asked in Medina Munawwar to execute Abdullah ibn Ubay, what did he say? He said the people will say that Muhammad kills his own. Leave him alone. Because it will create confusion amongst the people. Yeah, those who were solid, yeah, they knew what was going on. But then you have those who are kind of weak, who you have expectations that eventually they will become strong. But at that point, they may succumb to the propaganda. I mean, we look throughout the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We see this over and over and over again. When we look throughout the life of Ahlul Bayt, throughout his household, whether it's Imam Hassan al-Islam or Imam Hussein al-Islam or Imam Zain al-Abidin or Muhammad Baqir or Jafar Sadiq or Musa Kadhim or Ali Rida or Muhammad Taqi or Ali Naqi or Hassan Askari or, alayhimus salam, it doesn't matter who we're talking about. We see this again, this hilm, this forbearance, that with all of the oppression, they still overlook things. It's very interesting. The kings would oppress them. But then when the kings were in trouble, these are the ones that they would call upon. Again, for those who've been listening in on the Sunday classes, this is what we've been talking about for the past 8 or 10 weeks or more. You look at, whether it's Ma'mun Rashid or Harun Rashid or Mu'taz or any of these other kings, they're the ones who eventually had them poisoned. They also abused them and put them in prison, but even when they were in prison, if they got in trouble, when the king got in trouble, who would he go and send his men to go and ask? Them. And they would answer just like anyone else was asking. This is Hilm. So this is part of Sabr, or rather Sabr is part of Hilm. But this is also, all of this comes under Rahmah, under the mercy. Allah is Ar-Rahman. But He sent His Habib as that mercy. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. It's a verse we hear again and again. But if you really start looking into all the implications of this verse, it just keeps going on and on and on. When we look at the being of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it doesn't matter, we can talk, all our lives, all of creation can write and talk all our lives in praising Him, and we still don't do Him justice. Again, this is the month of the birth of Rasulullah. This is the month of mercy. You know, when Ramadan comes, we all talk about, oh, you know, the month of the Quran. The Quran was revealed in Ramadan. But that is the Quran Islamic. That's the silent Quran. That is the Quran that we read, but it does not talk to us. Unless we know the connection to the one it was revealed to. Because the reality is that Rasulullah himself is the Quran. He is not just the Quran, he is the explanation to the Quran. This is why, you know, those companions who accepted him immediately had no hesitation in accepting him. Because they had seen him. They knew him. You know, you look at like, you know, it's interesting. The wife can accept her husband as many things. But the wife does not accept her husband as superior to herself. That's just not the nature of the wife. The wife does not accept the husband as buzurg, you know, as you know, someone who's elevated and very exalted. Yet when Rasulullah comes, you know, when he comes with the message, his wife has no hesitation in accepting him. She is the first to accept him. She is the first of the believers. And then we see Sayyidina Ali Karamallah accept him immediately. He grew up on the chest of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then we see Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. You know, and these are people who accepted him without having to ask for any proof. Of course, the people of the household are the people of the household, but people outside of the household, Abu Bakr radiallahu is the only one who accepted Rasulullah without any proof. Because he had lived with him. He had traveled with him. He knew him. He had seen him. Which is why when the revelation comes, Abu Bakr radiallahu is traveling. But when he returns, he comes out of his house to come and meet Rasulullah. And Rasulullah is coming out of his house to go and meet Abu Bakr. And they meet in the middle. And Rasulullah says to Abu Bakr, he says, I am the messenger of Allah. And Abu Bakr immediately says, I accept. He didn't ask for any proof. Because he'd already seen all of the proofs. He didn't need anything else. Just seeing the Rasulullah was proof. This is why, as we've talked about before, all of the other prophets, their seal of prophethood was in their hand. The seal of prophethood of Rasulullah was on his back. Because for all the other prophets, when you saw him, perhaps maybe there was still some doubt. When you shook their hand, there was no doubt left. With the Rasulullah, when you saw him, there was no doubt. Even those who opposed him knew who he was. But their egos kept them from accepting him. Because in order to accept him, you have to acknowledge him as greater than yourself. This is why there's so, when we look at Abu Jahl, when we look at Abu Lahab, all of these others who knew who he was but still refused to accept him. This is why, because their egos would not allow it. You know, because they are the followers of Shaitan. Why did Shaitan not prostrate to Adam alayhi salam? His ego. Ana khayrun min, I am better than him. Even though he knows this is a direct command from Allah. So I'll end here today, inshallah. We'll start talking more specifically about the Mawlid of Rasulullah next week. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fill our hearts with His true love and the true love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all of those whom they love. And may He give strength and victory to our brothers and sisters in Gaza and Palestine and wherever the Muslims are being oppressed over their oppressors. Those who have not made sunnah, go to make sunnah.